but you see, the thing is, some Christians believe in something which is called the sensus divina. I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this right. Yeah, sensus divinatus, which is that God basically reveals his existence by dumping the knowledge straight into the heads and hearts of every person out there. And so a person who is a true believer will often feel like they, their feeling about what's true about God is enough to prove that it really is true, and that every person on earth actually feels the same thing, and anybody who has a different outlook on God is just lying about what they think. It's kind of a cornerstone of presuppositional apologetics. So, and so, people with a scientific bent will tend to, assume that everything that they think could possibly be wrong, and then go look for ways to investigate and demonstrate that they're actually not wrong. But but the faith model of the world says that the stuff that you really believe, that's because God put that in there, and so they feel perfectly justified in stopping what they might have been indoctrinated with as kids, because they just feel that it's true.
Yeah, so reason has nothing to do with it.
No, and part of it is that, you think that other people may be indoctrinated, but you don't think you're actually indoctrinating your kids. You think you're teaching them and teaching the right stuff and making them receptive vessels for God to stick something in. We imbue purpose onto things. Now, if you want to look at it as what is the purpose that is imbued in humanity externally in the same way of the car being designed, then it's, as far as we can tell, to pass on our genetic code. That's the process that evolution's given us. But we can give our lives whatever meaning and purpose we want.
Okay, so in other words, you guys gravitate that evolution is real and true and validated.
Of course. Don't you think evolution is true?
Well, microevolution maybe, but macroevolution.
Wow. It's okay. I realize that there are people out there who just fall into this trap of making these distinctions, but okay.
Right. Well, the thing you just asked is a non sequitur, because the reason we think evolution is true is that basically it's the recognized explanation by biologists for how the diversity of life came about. But it's got nothing to do with explaining, now that we're here, what should we do with our lives.
What can you believe in this life? Can you believe Darwin? Do you believe like what's written about his beliefs, or what happened with him as far as his development?
Darwin's beliefs as such aren't really of interest to me. The reason that evolution is treated as true at this point is because it made testable predictions which people could then study and then potentially contradict, and it turned out to be accurate. I mean, like, I don't know if you're familiar with ring species, for instance. Have you heard about this?
Can you elaborate?
Well, okay, so one of the things that that people have discovered when they study is that there are these islands where you have similar species, like I guess finches would be one of the examples, where the neighboring finches, as you go around the island, can all mate with each other, okay?
Okay.
But when you get all the way around the island, because there's been drift, it turns out the last species in the group has changed so much that it can't interbreed with the first, which means that it's actually a speciation event, a change in actual species. I mean, it's stuff like that that demonstrates that that diversity of life actually has natural explanations.
Right. So, like, basically, based off of that logic, you would apply that blanket over all existence and say that everything was an accident, came from a cesspool, some unknown phenomenon, let's not identify it as God.
Cesspool. I don't think any modern scientific theory says anything about cesspools.
Yeah, but
about that.
The thing is, taking a general principle and extending it out, is a good way to begin a hypothesis. And so
Right.
while we know, you've made a distinction between microevolution and macroevolution, the only real difference is time. Given enough time, you're going to have the opportunity for all of the diversity that we see. But the thing is...
But we're on a timeline.
What?
We're on a timeline. You know, this life is going to be over soon enough for you or for me. You know,
what the hell does that have to do with what I'm saying? I'm saying, given enough time, your view of this distinction between microevolution and macroevolution is that you're convinced that little changes can occur, but these little changes. No, let me finish. But you don't think these little changes can result in big changes given enough time. And that's just absurd. And the reason that we can say that is because once we discovered this basic principle and we went out and began to investigate it, we started making, testable hypotheses. And it turns out that evolution makes predictions, and not just about things like microbes and fruit flies and how they evolve and pesticides, but also in the bigger sense of, hey, if our understanding of the history of life is correct, we can go out to this area, dig this deep, and find this sort of creature. And we've done that with Tiktaalik and other examples. These are, we have, by the way, even if there was no fossil evidence, the DNA evidence alone is enough to confirm that we have all evolved from shared ancestors.
Thing is, if we come to a position where we say there's an oxygen atom and a hydrogen atom, some kind of phenomenon happened. Let's not identify that phenomenon, but let's just say it's a phenomenon. And all of a sudden, there was life. Millions and billions and trillions of years
No, it doesn't say
past.
all of a sudden.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Let me back you up for a minute, because I feel like we're kind of going down a rabbit hole.
How did we get to evolution from Jesus, by the way? But go ahead.
I don't know.
it's a tree.
Do you feel like the concept of science is a valid one? That
Yes.
basically you can systematically investigate the world and find stuff out about what happens?
Yes.
Where do you feel like your religious belief fits in on all that? I mean, do you feel like your belief about what Jesus said and did is verifiable in the same way as gravity?
Well, that's you get to faith there. I'm not denying that to believe in God it doesn't take faith.
I mean, what I'm gonna say here is
no,
that,
it doesn't.
What?
He said that
To
not
believe
no,
in evolution.
Stop. He said to not believe in God takes faith too. Do you believe in Bigfoot?
No.
Is that a faith-based position that you have there?
No.
Then don't tell me mine is either. That's absurd.
I meant to say to believe in evolution.
No, belief in evolution doesn't take faith. All it takes is an understanding of the science involved and an acceptance of reality. That's not faith. Faith is the excuse. Faith is the excuse that people give for believing something when they don't have a good reason. Belief in evolution is based on good reasons. It's just reality. The explanation for it, yes, you just said that science can only take you so far. So far. Let me tell you about so far. So far, the single most reliable, consistent way of determining anything true about the universe is science, hands down, unequivocally. And if you were to demonstrate some alternate way of knowing, how would you demonstrate its reliability? Why, you'd have to use, what's that? Oh, science. The fact that it can only take you so far just means that we don't know everything yet. But if you believe in a God and you're willing to, why would you accept anything on faith knowing that you don't have a good reason for it?
Well, this is the thing. For me, I have a relationship with the God I believe in.
What kind of relationship?
Okay, for you, you may not comprehend it, but like also, for example, in the Bible,
I understand most relationships.
Jason,
why do you think this one is incomprehensible?
I'm going to let you get to it, but this idea that I may not comprehend it, are you aware that I was a fundamentalist Christian for 25 years and was going to be a minister?
No.
Okay. Continue to explain your relationship with Jesus that I don't understand.
Okay. Like, for example, in the Bible, there's signs, there's wonders, there's miracles. One aspect that has happened in the Christian community in the book of Acts, and I'm sure with your background you've heard of it, is when they waited in the upper room and the Holy Spirit came upon them and they began to speak in languages that they did not speaking before.
Jason,
and other people,
Jason, how do you know the story's true? I mean, I read Harry Potter, and I don't believe that Voldemort was really a bad guy who did stuff.
I'm surprised.
You're surprised?
No, I'm sorry. Lame humor again. I apologize. Okay, what I'm saying is, let's say you could say the story is false.
I know. I can say I'm not saying the story's false. I'm saying I have no good reason to believe the story is true. Why do you?
Because I've experienced the baptism of the Holy Ghost. My personal experience.
But
as far as speaking
let's assume for a second that you're absolutely correct and that you did experience that. That still doesn't tell you one bit about whether that story was true. Because that's no different than saying, hey, I got abducted by aliens last night, which tells me that all the other alien abduction stories are true. You are making connections that are not logically sound.
Well, so I mean, you're just denying all this, but somebody could also deny evolution. I mean, there's historical fact that Jesus lived the same time as popular figures like Caesar Augustus.
No, it's not. It's not historical established fact at all. That's why there's a question.
It's not that he wasn't born in the Middle East of Jerusalem and the impact that it's had on the world in that area. Just the following alone. Do you think people just made up Jesus?
I believe that the following happened.
The following, the fact that people believe this stuff, isn't in doubt. But you realize that all happened centuries later.
No, they followed him after he died. They followed him during his life.
And you know this from what source?
And you know this how?
From the history of...
No. There's no history that talks about the disciples and people believing in mass crowds. And there's actually not a single extra biblical source that even references Jesus that is contemporary with his supposed existence. Not one.
What I'm saying is that...
If your belief is based on faith, then why are we having a conversation? Because let me finish the question. The reason I ask why we should bother having a conversation is because clearly you think that it's okay to just believe something on faith, and I do not. And I don't have the experience that you've had, and evidently you're admitting that you cannot demonstrate the truth and reality of your God to anyone else, which is kind of the point of having these conversations. I freely admit, and have admitted from the beginning, there are people out there who believe on faith. They can't prove it to anybody else, and I can't prove that their faith is wrong. And so those conversations are pointless because those people are, by definition, gullible.
Well, for example, evolution is a proven theory, nothing more. It takes faith to believe that it is.
Do you know what theory means?
100% accurate.
Go ahead.
Do you know what theory means?
What does it mean?
Theory is basically, I mean, have you heard of the theory of gravity, for instance, or the germ theory of diseases?
Gravity is not a theory. That's
yes, it is.
Okay.
That's a law. What goes up comes down. That's
Jason.
a fixed law. There's no debate. There's no argument about that.
No. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. A theory is a framework of explaining a set of observed facts. You have... the law of gravity is not a graduation of the theory of gravity. There's a theory of gravity which is conceptually stating that different things are drawn to each other. And the law of gravity is just a description that comes from the theory of gravity. There's no higher term in science than a theory. A theory is a framework which has been tested and understood to explain observed reality. When you say it's just a theory, you might as well say that, we're living in just reality.
Well, there's many theories is what I'm saying. But you guys have came to accept
that
evolution is the first or
there are many theories, like germ theory of disease.
How would you explain existence? And then I would have a question that would, and then I would love to.
How would you explain God?
Well, no, hang on.
What I'm saying is, I believe God is the cause.
And what's the cause of that?
There is not one. God is the causeless
so you think that you've got this term, which is the end of all explanation, and once you get there, you just say, nope, I don't have to explain anything, right?
There's a time where you can't explain.
Okay.
Well, for example,
how do you know that's not the
question I asked you?
Then how do you know that's not the universe?
When you get to the point where you can't explain, the answer becomes I don't know, not I know it's God.
Well, no, it's belief. I mean, I believe.
I don't give a rat's ass about belief. I care about reality and what can be demonstrated to be true. I mean,
So
you do not understand science in the slightest because, as Russell tried to explain, theory is the pinnacle. It is the height of science. It is the goal of all hypotheses to, if they could think, become an established theory. This is not just something that somebody pulled out of their ass. There are not competing theories with regard to the diversity of life. There is the theory of evolution, which is the established scientific theory, and then there are all these other things out here like creationism. That's not a theory.
That's because you don't debate that.
Creationism is not a theory.
In other words, for example,
creationism is just stuff that's made up.
Hang on.
For example,
I'll let you do your, Jason, I'll let you do your example. Do you understand that creationism is not a theory?
What is it then?
It is a hypothesis at best. A theory is something that has been tested and confirmed. It is like it got its damn diploma. Christianity is like, I'm getting ready to go to preschool, and I left my lunch at home.
Okay. So, okay, let me ask you. The building you live in now, which by the way, you haven't answered the question of how existence began, but I guess the
neither
answer
have
is
you.
You don't know.
I'm happy to say that I don't know how things began to exist, and I'm not going to pretend that I do like you are. Now, ask your question about the building.
Okay, the building you're in right now, do you know who built it?
No.
Okay, so just because you don't know the builder doesn't mean there isn't one.
Oh, you know what?
By seeing the building alone,
Jason,
you can establish there was a builder.
Jason, I'll concede that there was a builder here. You know what more? Let's say builder, because there's probably a lot of people, based on all the information that we have from looking around at other buildings, probably a lot of people built this. But it's possible that there was a single designer and architect, but you know what I can do? I can go down to City Hall and I can find out the plans that were filed there and actually find out who did this. And if I can't, I'm still not justified in assuming that this building didn't have an architect.
Well, you would be unjustified to assume that a bunch of concrete laying on the floor evolved into a building.
Exactly.
That would be retarded.
Exactly. It would be absolutely just as stupid as proposing that a magical being put it all together. But let me explain to you the difference between your building and creation, as you were going to get to in a moment. A building needs a builder, creation needs a creator. Well, guess what? It's not creation, it's reality. A building, all of the evidence and every single example of what we identify as a building is known to be built by someone, is known to have been designed. We do not contrast designed things and undesigned things by their complexity or by their apparent function. We contrast design with nature. This building does not naturally occur. There is no reason to think that this could naturally occur, and all evidence points to everything that even appears to be like this being designed intentionally by a mind. That is not the case when you get to living beings, which are natural and reproduce and follow natural laws and chemical laws that are self-replicating. It is also not the case with the broader universe, because first of all, you don't have another universe to compare it to, so you can't contrast it with anything. But all of the evidence points to the conclusion that we need to look for natural explanations, because first of all, we can't test the supernatural explanations. Second of all, they do not provide any explanatory power. It is trying to solve a mystery with a mystery.
So let me ask you this. Let's just take, from my understanding of the theory of evolution, it started from little to nothing, whether it be a hydrogen atom, an oxygen atom.
I need a third hand to facepalm right now.
What is the theory explanation for existence?
You're asking for what is the solution to the question of abiogenesis, and the answer is we don't have that solution yet, but we have people who are working on it and who have demonstrated that at least in theory it is possible for living matter to arise from non-living matter under the right circumstances. I'd recommend that you go to Wikipedia to start with and look up abiogenesis, which is distinct from evolution. Evolution deals with what happens after life is there. It's undeniable the two are tied together. I'm not making that claim.
Okay, so billions, trillions, quadrillions of years go by. We're at the pinnacle of mankind, and we find out we still don't know what's going on here.
Yeah,
So
and doesn't that suck that we don't
God?
know everything yet? Why does that give us the right to make shit up?
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. But why would we just say there is no God based upon our ignorance, or saying that?
Did I say that?
Why?
Russell?
I didn't say that.
Did either of us say that?
Right. But
Well,
you're saying
as
for
an atheist,
sure
you say there's no God, right?
No, as an atheist, I say I don't believe that your God exists. Can you prove it?
Oh.
Oh. It only took us 40 minutes to get there.
But
Well, at least it didn't take us millions of years.
Yeah, and you know what? You still don't know.
No, I know there's a God.
How do you
Because
know?
there's no
How do you
relationship.
know? I mean that seems to be. Are you sure you're not being a bit hyperbolic with your language there? What do you mean you know there's a God? How do you know?
I know for sure, from personal experience, there's a God.
so are you saying that
Okay.
you're infallible?
No. Hang on.
All right.
Stop. I asked how you know, and you replied with I know. Bam. I want to know how you know.
Well, of course there's faith, but that ain't acceptable. Listen, I know we need the
That's
three
true.
hands on your head. That's truth, right? Because
You cannot know anything by faith by definition.
what I'm saying is that, yeah, based upon feelings and experiences that you have, you could identify whether you want to say God, whether you want to say creator, whether you want to say phenomenon, whatever the label you want to put on it. When there's been an experience in my life that it could not scientifically, could not be explained. For example,
So in other words, whenever something happens to you that you don't understand, you just say, well, must have been magic.
I mean, you just asserted
No.
that science, not only, you said science cannot explain. How the hell did you decide that?
with me using the Bible as my foundation. that
Which you
guys
still haven't
completely
established
throw away in the
why you
trash.
would. Which you still haven't established
don't-
why you would know that it's true.
Okay, but let's just say I believe it's true. Whether it is or not.
I know you
we'll
believe
debate
it's
that.
true, but
Right.
Matt asked how you know it's true.
So, okay, that's what I'm going to get to.
Well,
I'm
no,
taking-
no, because the last thing, which is important, is that you just said you had experiences that science cannot explain, and therefore you attribute them to God. That is, by definition, the argument from ignorance fallacy. It is the premier example of the argument from ignorance fallacy. I don't have a scientific explanation, so I'm going to go with a supernatural explanation. That is utterly illogical and irrational.
Okay, but we don't have an explanation for existence.
Correct.
we're
So,
free to
don't
make one
pretend
up.
like we do.
Well, okay, right. I'm just saying what I believe and display what you believe. But you asked, what is my experience? That's what you asked. My
Did we?
experience is,
Yeah, at some point,
Okay.
I'm sure, in this year-long call.
yeah.
Well, that's why
My-
we got 2 hours. We're only an hour in.
My
Believe it or
experience
not.
is, welcome to the Atheist Experience, right? My experience is, come in the book of Acts, when they were filled with the Holy Ghost, they spoke in another language that they never spoke.
So
That has happened to me, and my personal belief. Not just me, but many people I know. In fact, many people I have led to receive the Holy Ghost was speaking in another language that they never had.
Honey, call Jerry DeWitt and have him call into the show right now if he has time, please. I'm getting ready to get a Pentecostal minister on here who did speak in tongues and can still do it on command. He would be happy to talk to you, I'm sure, about your
And he denounces
experience.
God.
What? Of course, he's an atheist. He woke up.
Wow.
He woke up.
Wow. Well, what do you wake up to? I mean, what do you
Reality.
wake up?
You wake up to reality. You begin to care about whether or not things are true. You begin to accept that sometimes the answer is I don't know. You begin to understand that just because you haven't found an explanation doesn't mean there isn't one. And just because science doesn't currently have an explanation that satisfies you, that you are not arrogantly endowed with this right to know everything because you view yourself as the pinnacle of human evolution at this point. And you realize that the best thing to do is to stop pretending like you know the answer, or stop assuming that you know the answer, and say, maybe my answer's right, maybe it's not. Let's investigate. How do we go about determining whether or not this actually is some kind of supernatural cause?
And I
What
mean-
does this tie in with with other things that we know about the brain and human interactions and things. Maybe if I investigate, I might be able to demonstrate that my stuff's actually true. But instead, I will just lazily accept that, well, science hasn't answered it yet, so this God thing must be the way to go.
And the thing about speaking in tongues is that it's not actually gaining some kind of special knowledge or insight. I mean, it's not even in actual language.
Yeah.
It's an acquired talent for spitting out syllables that come into your head. And when people have tried to test whether it's an actual language that has any meaning, people use the same syllables to mean completely different things. It is actually gibberish.
80% of scientists believe in a God, so believing in God is not necessarily against science, but science is more against theism.
Yeah, no. I'm fine with the idea that you can be an agnostic theist or an agnostic atheist, but science is most definitely in opposition to supernatural claims. Science is based on methodological naturalism, which just says that, hey, we can't actually address these claims, so we can't make pronouncements that they're false. However, the theological claims don't have that same barrier. They are making claims about reality that are actually testable. People are claiming that there is some being or entity or whatever that has manifested in a way that they are able to detect it, which makes it by definition within the realm of investigation. And that's why I say the two are in conflict.
Right. Believing in God is distinct from being a good scientist. You can do both, but generally scientists who are honest about this avoid mixing up their personal unjustified belief with their science, and there's very little attempt to actually publish peer-reviewed papers that support the claim that there's God.
I mean, you have to separate the two. If you're doing science, if you're in a laboratory, and I apologize as a non-scientist, this is going to be a terrible caricature, but if you're in the lab and you're doing something and you end up running a test strip under in a fluid and it's supposed to turn blue, and it turns blue, if you are a scientist working under methodological naturalism, okay, you've gotten a result that was consistent with your expectations and you note it and you can go back and do trials. But if you're a theist who believes in the supernatural world and a God who could potentially be tampering or in rules that could potentially change at any time, you don't know what the hell happened. Maybe it turned blue because you got the right result. Maybe magical blue dusting fairies came in and screwed with it just to throw you off. Maybe some God wanted you to get the wrong result so that you'd end up doing something bad or good or whatever.
Could be that same chemical reaction is supposed to produce something red, but every experiment causes a miracle.
Well, I get the point, but
otherwise I'm just going to sit here and wallow in my ignorance and enjoy it. Thanks so much for everybody. Thanks to the people from the Texas Free Thought Convention for coming out today.
Yeah, you guys. Woo.
There's the folks that make the show happen. We're going to go out to dinner. I'm Matt. He's Russell.
Always a pleasure,
done.
Matt.
We're